Hello, and welcome to this lecture on study designs. After this lecture, students should be able to understand study design, identify and compare cross-sectional, panel, trend, cohort, and case study designs, as well as recognize the advantages and disadvantages of each non-experimental design. So, what is a study design? A study design is a research plan that specifies the number of cases to be studied, the number of times the data will be collected, the number of samples used, and how the researcher will manipulate, control, or measure the independent variable in some way. For a causal hypothesis, where one variable is the cause of another variable, the researcher will also have to consider how to control for or eliminate extraneous variables in order to demonstrate causality. So let's look at some different types of study designs. The first and most straightforward is a cross-sectional design. This is a study design in which data are collected for all variables using one sample at one point in time. This is by far one of the more common types of study designs. This is what we frequently see whenever we see a survey or a poll or something like that. They are usually this sort of cross-sectional sort of study design where they collect data once and that's it. Longitudinal study designs, on the other hand, are designs in which data are collected at least two or more different times. And there's a number of different types of longitudinal study designs. The first is panel. This is a study design with data collected about one sample at least two or more times, where the independent variable is not controlled by the researcher. So here we're going to go out, we're going to collect data on the same group of people multiple times. We're going to go revisit the same individuals multiple times and collect data from them. Trend, on the other hand, is a study design in which data are collected at least two different times, with a new sample selected from the same population each time. So in contrast to panel data, or panel study designs, trend study designs, we're going to get a new sample, different people each time we go out and collect data. So we're still going to collect data multiple times, and we're going to do our best to make sure our first sample is similar to our second sample, but the people or individuals within each sample are going to change from time to time. Finally, the last is cohort. It is a study design that follows a particular group of people born within a given time frame or experiencing a similar life event during the same time period over an extended period. And it can either be a panel cohort study or a trend cohort study, depending. But basically with cohort study designs, we're going to follow the same group of people that are born within a given time frame or experience the same life event, right? Whether they were born at the same time, they got married at the same time, they got graduated from high school at the same time, whatever it is, we're going to follow them and study their experiences. Cross-sectional study designs are again the most common research design and are widely used because they can provide large samples of a population for relatively cheap. When used to examine a causal hypothesis, however, great care must be taken to ensure that the three conditions for causality must be met. 1. Independent variable before the dependent variable. 2. Relationship or association or correlation is shown. And finally 3. That extraneous variables are accounted for or controlled for. Cross-sectional designs have some difficulties with causality. Because we are only collecting data once, we must ensure to include any and all variables that we want to control for. We only have one chance at this, we have to make it count. We need to be also able to show that independent variable comes before the dependent variable. Again, difficult when we're only collecting data once. Finally, we must be cautious because cross-sectional designs are great for describing a sample and population, but face difficulties with internal validity and causality because it is very difficult to control for all possible extraneous variables. Let's get into these longitudinal designs more. Panel studies provide strong internal validity because they use the same sample multiple times, so that any changes we see can be attributed to the passage of time and changes over time, right? If we're going back to the same group, and individuals every time. Any changes we see, we can attribute to that passage of time. However, there are issues with attrition, people dropping out of the study, not taking the survey anymore, things like that, and conditioning, where people get used to taking the survey and they stop paying attention or they stop putting any real effort into it. This is also a very costly and time-consuming sort of commitment for both the researcher and the participants. Trend studies also measure this change over time, but without having to keep the same sample. This means that issues around panel attrition and conditioning are removed, right? We don't have to worry about people dropping out or getting tired of taking the survey or going through our research. And this also makes it cheaper than panel studies for a number of reasons. We don't have to go find the same people again. We can select a new sample. However, this increase in external validity, ability to generalize, also means that we're going to lose some internal validity or ability to show a causal relationship, because we cannot be certain that both of our samples are going to be equal. We cannot be certain that the first time we collect a sample is going to have the same characteristics as the second time we collect that sample. Cohort studies can use the panel or trend designs. However, researchers are sampling only the target demographic or cohort. Example, targeting a generation such as baby boomers, millennials, Gen Z, or targeting people who got married, had a baby, graduated, etc. at a similar time. Finally, we have case studies. A case study is a research strategy that focuses on only one case in the social context in which it occurs. The goal is to get as much details about the case in the context as possible in order to provide a holistic and contextualized view of the case for the deepest understanding. Case studies can be intrinsic, in which the researcher is interested in the case itself; instrumental, where the researcher is interested in generalizing from a typical case; or collective, where the researcher plans on using several cases to generalize or understand something about a larger selection of cases. Case study designs generally don't lend themselves toward strong external validity. They tend to be difficult to generalize from because you are focusing on one or a few number of cases. However, they tend to have stronger internal validity or ability to show a causal relationship because we are focusing on understanding as much as possible about our cases, that we can usually do a good job of explaining why or how something happened. Alright, that's it for this lecture. Thank you for watching.